How should we be thinking about MLS's post-settlement? What is the controversy surrounding clear cooperation and the delayed marketing policy that they just came out with? Well, I'm here with OB Jacobi. He is the president of Windermere Real Estate based in Seattle, and we talk all things real estate, leadership, and clear cooperation. So enjoy the podcast. OB, welcome to the RealTrending podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since we've talked, so I'm glad we connected, and we got a lot to talk about today. So
there's always a lot.
Oh, I know. I'm going to really start with a question about kind of a leadership challenge. Since so much has happened over the past couple of years, what has been your biggest leadership challenge in the past year, and how did you handle it?
You know, the thing I love the most about this industry is also probably the hardest thing for a leader, which is it's constantly changing and evolving. And so, over the last, since the pandemic, who was ready for that? How did you adapt? How did you lead through that change? And then as the market softened, what are you telling your people? How are you coaching them? How are you reacting? And then, a national lawsuit, what is your strategy? Looking backwards, how could you have been better? Looking forwards, how can you be better? And what is your strategy going forward? And then, current threats and market conditions, competition, things that people want to do in the market and move the market in ways that you don't believe in is all hard. I think the thing, I'm lucky. I'm in a family business. I run the business with my siblings and my brother-in-law. We get the benefit. This is a really lonely business. We, as agents, you're an entrepreneur within a firm, or you might be an entrepreneur running your own business as a leader. And it's very lonely. Who do you talk to? How do you strategize? What do you come up with? And it takes a village as leadership to really find your center and find the right direction at the right time. And so I'm lucky. I get to sit back and have conversations with family, with people around us in our core leadership team, and discuss what is core to us as leaders and how do we move forward. And that really has been our guiding light kind of through all of these things. And so I think the hardest thing is not jumping into the fray and just speaking your piece immediately and being reactionary. It's really taking the time to think about how to move forward and then doing it in the right way for our people. They see so much change on the ground level combat that how can we soften that and make it better for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge challenge in general, just to kind of educate agents, especially when things are like going wonky from all different directions. So
Totally.
Super hard. I mean, and one thing that you have spoken out about recently is clear cooperation. I know you're part of the broker-owned Northwest MLS, which of course has been in the news a lot lately. So why does this issue, and really it's about the delayed marketing and the private listings, but how does this issue, or why does it matter so much to you as a brokerage leader?
Yeah, you kind of got to go back in time and look at the history of real estate to be able to answer that question effectively. I got my license in 1989, back when there were still MLS books. People had to call offices and find out about listings, and it was a very, very interesting market, if not fragmented, right? You had to have your agent. A lot of people went into the office to find their agents. That's why we have so much space. But anyway, different conversation. But it was very fragmented. And as the internet came along, we had a guy in our company. His name was Brian Allen, who developed our website. Was really one of the guys that pioneered the term and the idea behind IDX: sharing of addresses, sharing of properties, giving attribution to other companies for those listings. And as time went on, I actually sat on the board of Northwest MLS. This was probably, 2015-ish, I'd say. And there was a rule where you had 3 days to input a listing into the Northwest MLS. And companies use that as their hot sheet, internal marketing and things like that. And we had a vote at the MLS to change that to a 24-hour rule. This is prior to clear cooperation, because we believe that was really what's best for the sellers and the buyers to see the full complement of listings available, was by publishing that to the open market. So we did that at the Northwest MLS prior to clear cooperation coming around in 2021. So when they came out with clear cooperation but included office exclusives, it's just like, oh, you guys, you had it so close to right. And it's hard for a franchise company as a franchisor to set the rules for every local market that has customary ways to do things is really difficult. We can tell you our opinions, we can have our values, we can try and push those, but what's customary in markets is really local. And so as clear cooperation continued through this last thing in March, that now allows people to really, really silo the markets, it's just a terrible idea. Let's fast forward this 5 years. Okay. Windermere, Howard Hanna, Remax, Keller, EXP, Compass, and I said Anywhere, all the big guys, they all have their own listings siloed. Tell me, is that good for a seller? I mean, we're saying this is seller choice. So is that good for a seller? No. Is it good for a buyer? I got to go to all these different sites, let alone fair housing and all of the other things. What I'd like to say is, hey, seller, chances are pretty high you're a buyer too. How do you derive value? How do you understand value? And most sellers know what their house is worth. How do they know that? Oh, they go to the open fair market and they do their own education. Silo it and see how that works. And then when they become a buyer, go see how it works and go find a house. This is terrible. So the siloed aspect of, private listing networks is bad enough, but hiding behind the company, hey, listen, let's do this. Abolish dual agency and see how much people want to do private listing networks. Are they going to say it's good for a seller at that point? No, they would never say that. So really?
Yeah, I'm actually in a transaction brokerage stage. So you can be a dual. Actually, I don't even know if you can be. You could be a single agent. But but we don't have dual agency. So
right, but you can recuse yourself. Probably you can represent both. So is that good for a seller, or is that good for a buyer when you don't represent anyone? Now, hey, listen. Certain instances, I want to buy my neighbor's house. I want to buy, of course, that's totally, it happens in our world, but 90% of the stuff is not that. People want representation.
Yeah, well, it's a big transaction. Of course they do. I mean, you're not making it every day. Even investors who are buying properties more frequently, still use real estate agents. They still, don't rely on themselves just to get the transaction done. So, So when we think about the MLS post-settlement, how should the industry be kind of rethinking the role of the MLS, or should they be rethinking it?
Well, oh man, that's a really loaded question for me. When 98% of all MLSs are run by associations that govern by one entity in Washington, or, over in Washington. I don't like it. I think local customs and local brokers know better what a national organization is trying to push. That's my take. I think broker owned, whether it's 50-50 between the broker-owned community and the association. I don't know what the right answer is. What I do know is that Northwest MLS has been a leader in the MLS industry for a very long time. People have looked to Northwest MLS as a guiding light, if you will. And in 2019, when we saw these lawsuits start, we're like, oh, shoot, we're doing it wrong. Let's change our rules. So Northwest MLS was never part of the national lawsuit. Well, why is that? Because brokers can adapt to the right market conditions faster than somebody making national choices at the local level. So in my opinion, having, number one, 512, I don't know what the number is today, that's too many. That's just too many fiefdoms of people that are trying to hold on to their thing. I think there should be less MLSs. I think there should be a consolidation. I think it should be some percentage of ownership from the brokerage community in totality. I think the governing of those entities is better that way. I think MLSs that really set the rules and follow the rules, that brokers help set in the local areas, is a really good idea. It's just off the top.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have been in this industry since '89 as well.
Yep. So
yeah. And I mean, MLS consolidation has been discussed since the '90s, at least. I remember when Zillow came onto the scene, that's when they really started ramping up the MLS consolidation talks. And it's happened a little. I mean, it's happened.
I think we were like 950 back then, though. So we're almost half.
Yeah. So
it's slow.
But yeah, so it's interesting, to see if that does ramp up again now, with everything going on. I want to talk. You mentioned at the beginning how you don't like to just react to things as a leader. That there's a thoughtful process behind it. So what separates kind of strong brokerage leadership from reactive leadership in today's market?
Well, I think there's a bunch of things. One, I think it's having clear values and sticking with your values. It's very easy to be swayed one side or the other. This issue specifically around private listing networks and office exclusives is very, very easy to say, oh, that could benefit us. It could benefit me with 30% market share in Seattle. Like I could easily be the beneficiary of something like that. So having very clear values and sticking to it is leadership number one, I think. And I think what we've found as a company is that people that are attracted to Windermere and know and like our values are standing behind us in what we're saying, which is really neat to see. Like, okay, we're on the right path. We're sticking true to what we believe. So that's good to see. I think there's a balance between over communication and under communication and fighting wars. What we've seen locally in Seattle is we were called out by Compass as part of the Northwest MLS and controlling the board and all this malarkey. And we could easily have gotten into, Instagram fights and social media fights with companies on our belief systems and all the rest. But what we found is that the Compass people believe in what Compass is doing. Okay, that's your belief system. I get it. The Windermere people believe in the Windermere stuff. And what's happening is it's almost like a political or religious war out there. Agents are after each other. And that's never been a thing. In my time in real estate, it's been very collegial and we've all gotten along and we're all on both sides of the transactions. And so this is hard for people on the streets doing everyday real estate, conducting everyday real estate. And so as a leader, we got to be really careful to not do the harm to them so they can't do their jobs for their customers. It's very easy to jump into this fray and they're the ones that have to pay the price, really. So I think as a leader, you got to be, the over communication or under, and then picking the right fight as to make sure that your voice is heard at the right time with the right message. And then, that's okay. We don't have to pound it home all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we used to be just sports rivalries, right? And now it's turned into political rivalries and real estate rivalries and company rivalries and to the next level almost. So it is interesting how that has transformed over the years, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, and what is interesting too is I don't think people really realize market share as far as national market share, which would be, I think that we at one point had like the top 100 companies had maybe 12% of the market share, I think, something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers. I don't know what it is this year. We haven't figured it out yet. But I think they're thinking some of these national companies have, 50% market share or something.
Right.
So.
I mean, that's the joy of our business. We have so many independents and so many people doing real estate different ways. It makes all of us better. I've said it before. I love competition. I love it. And, and a company comes in with better marketing, I got to up my marketing. Like that's really good for the consumers and really good for the agent population.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you, what do you think the national brands get wrong about local market power?
I don't think it's really putting us on the spot. And I said it's probably the same answer that I said about National Association of Realtors. It's really hard to govern from afar. And I'm being completely transparent. It's hard for us as a franchisor company operating out of Seattle to say our customs are the same in Utah, are the same in Portland, are the same in Montana. They're not. They're just not. And so I think that's kind of the point, is that we have an incredible amount of people in our industry and at Windermere that volunteer their time for board seats, for MLS seats, for all the things that govern our industry. That stuff is done way better at the local level. It just is. Again, we can share our values. We can attract people that believe in our values, and hopefully they sit on boards and do things that try and make change where change is needed, if that's the thing. If they get voted down in boards, that's okay too. At least we're trying in a way that's more democratic than, we're going to do it this way. I just don't think that works.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, real estate has always been hyper local anyway. So decisions made on a national level sometimes won't fit certain areas. It just depends. I mean, and honestly, the private listings with luxury properties, there are instances where I guess it could be necessary, but those are few and far between, I think.
Well, I wouldn't, in almost every MLS, and I'm making a generalized statement. I know that in Northwest MLS, and I know that in our MLS, and I know that in many of our MLSs, there are options for sellers to say, I don't want my house, I don't want a sign, I don't want an address, I don't want, it has to be shown by my agent, I don't want any of, so really, you get down to the brass tacks of it, all we're talking about is days on market. That's the thing. So I talked about dual agency. If private listing networks aren't about that, then abolish dual agency. But really, we're talking about days on market. So go to the MLSs and have that changed if that's what you're talking about. But saying that my house should test the market, to me, means that agent doesn't know how to price the house. I mean, come on. There was an instance on LinkedIn today that a seller just posted where they were on a private network. And they had their buyer fell out, so they went to the open market and got 100,000 more than that buyer offered on the private network. So, is an open market better? Yeah, I would say it is. Are there times when people need privacy and the things that somebody might need? Of course there are. And again, I want to state there are times where people sell off market. That's a common thing in the market. That's not privately withholding listings from the market.
Correct. Yeah. I'm going to switch gears to tech. I know you have a heavy background in tech, and there's so much noise today around like AI and tech. And, where are you seeing some meaningful innovation for brokerages in the AI space right now?
In full transparency, I don't think I've seen it.
Okay.
I think I've seen, write my listing and, improve my marketing and things like that. I was talking to one of our agents down in Sacramento. He's new to a geographic farm area. And so he's been, this sounds funny, he's been talking to ChatGPT a lot about how does he increase his marketing and what does he do? He's using it in a really interesting way, different than what I think the industry is is doing. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. I was sitting at a dinner with a woman who runs an event company, and we were talking about AI and what's the future and all the rest. She goes, watch this. And she pulls up an AI app and she talks into the AI app for about 5 minutes, telling it to create an app for searchable homes on real estate. And she just kept talking. And she looked at it and it had created an SOW, statement of work, for that app. She copied and pasted it to ChatGPT and said, code this app. And it happened in 10 minutes time. Now, that isn't the perfect app and that isn't the perfect SOW. But the reality of it is, oh my gosh, look at what's coming in the realm of development, and you go across the board in our industries. What are the things that we do that takes human time that we shouldn't be doing? There's a lot. And so I think AI hasn't even scratched the surface in our industry of what it will do. And I think it's coming. I just don't know how many companies are spending a ton of money on it yet. Especially in a down market.
Yeah. Are you looking at that? Are you looking for some innovation that way, or?
We are. We're talking to independent sources outside of the industry to try and identify places where we are spending a lot of time where we shouldn't be. Reporting, contract reviews, things like that we think we could streamline a lot better. That kind of thing. So we're kind of analyzing all aspects of our business and what could make it better.
So I know you didn't start Windermere, but it's family owned. And if you had to do it from scratch today, what would you do differently and what would you do the same?
It's a good question. I think the things that were different when real estate started, we kind of talked about it a little bit when we started, which was the real estate office was kind of the center of the social network of a neighborhood. People went to it to find all housing, no matter what. They had social events. It's a very social industry in general anyway. And so the real estate office was kind of the hub. Everybody came to work, whether it was back in the Glen Ross days and metal chairs and smoking cigarettes or what it's evolved into. I think the reality, and we've said this for decades now, is that space, especially after COVID, space is, we all just have too much space. And so if I were going to do it a little bit differently in today's world, I'd have a little more of a hub and spoke model, a big office with small satellites around. There's 19 offices in the city of Seattle. And if I had to add up the amount of square footage in those offices, it'd be staggering. So I think that kind of stuff, I think I'd do differently. The things that we've gotten very right, I think, my dad had a saying, hire the best people, give them the best tools, and get out of their way. And that saying was because they were entrepreneurial in spirit, and entrepreneurs like to take what you got and use it to the best of their benefit. I think that model has changed a little bit. Hire the best people, give them the best tools. We still have to coach and help and do and all those things. But I think our connection to our community, our connection to our agents, our foundation, our culture, all the things that really hold the company together, I think we've done very right. And I think that's transferred. We've got Windermere we have 320-ish offices across 10 states. And in that, there's about 180 owners. Of those 180, I think 90 of them are second generation owners that are now bringing their kids up in the business. And so that's a really cool, we're just not a family company. They're families of families that own franchises that are still coming up. So we've had these really, really long relationships with people that hold us together. And I think that's a really neat thing about real estate.
Yeah,
and
I love
about
that.
Our company. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So what advice would you give brokerage leaders who are trying to stand their ground or grow amid a lot of the new single entity brokerages, national brokerages that are growing so quickly especially in the rankings?
That's a good question. So here's, what I've seen over decades in this business is there's plenty of room for everybody. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of independence in our real estate space. And so as an independent, if I was an independent office owner of one office and I'm growing it, I think the whole key is staying true to your values and recruiting the people that are going to hold true to your values and really hold tight to those folks and make sure that you are all kind of working together and grow that, because there's lots and lots of room. National Wall Street isn't going to take over the real estate space in totality. It just won't. People have too much fear of that corporation in wherever, New York, working in local markets. It just isn't the right model for local real estate. And so I think there's lots and lots of room for independents to grow. I think there's lots of room for regional companies to grow. I think it's really finding your right people, what they believe in, and holding on to that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, not everyone wants to start a real estate company that grows as big as, an EXP or Compass, who are number one right now in transaction sides and volume on the RealTrends verified rankings. But, it is interesting how quickly some of these companies have grown over, just by but developing like this single entity. And they're not all low fee. Some of them are, but they're not all. So It is interesting.
I mean, we study competition and brands and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And, the EXP model is super interesting. Is that a culture you want to be a part of? If so, then fantastic. That's what I mean. Like if you want to be online and virtual, great. There's room for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So what keeps you up at night about the industry?
Oh my God, what doesn't? I mean, it's funny. You have good days, you have bad days, you have good weeks, you have bad weeks, you have times where you're just, drowning in stuff. I think the thing I just love about this business is the people part of it. Every single agent is an entrepreneur in their own business, doing things differently. I could go next door to our East Lake office here, and we have 60 people, and I'd find 60 different ways of doing the business. And so at the very, very, very local level of real estate, combat, hand to hand, people are entrepreneurial and doing it. At the office level, the same thing. The manager, the broker, the designated broker of those offices got their own set of stuff. They're trying to figure out, how do I recruit? How do I keep people in my office? How do I help them succeed? How do I coach? All the things. How do I work with my staff to offer the best possible product? And then at the ownership franchisor level, same kind of thing. How do I deal with these national decisions? How do I deal with lawsuits? How do I build an education department that services a bigger total? I just think the industry is so great and changes every single day. I just love it.
Have you seen your leadership style evolve over, especially with the lawsuits and now with the DOJ and everything? Have you seen your leadership style evolve or?
Yeah, I mean, in different ways. So, communication after the pandemic is way different than it used to be. We get to sit on this and do a podcast where in 19, we probably would have been in person.
Yeah.
So communication models have changed, and how do you adapt to that? How do you offer your people the ability to talk amongst each other in the company? That kind of stuff. We used to be very quiet on almost all subjects because half our people liked one way and half liked the other way. I think we still are mostly quiet. I think when it comes to issues around the industry and things that threaten us or lawsuits or things like that, we feel compelled to speak up and have our opinion heard. So I think those things we're a little more apt to share that with the world than we used to be. But for the most part, as I think, technology's gotten better, we have a better opportunity to connect with our people. So that's better. But other than that, I don't know, again, I think when you have a clear set of values, it's pretty easy to stick to those. And those become, and again, having multiple people around you to bounce ideas off and go, oh, that's terrible, that doesn't fit. Oh, thank you for saying that. It helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my last question is just, what's next for your firm?
It's a good question. We have rolled out, we kind of took a look at our offering as a franchisor, and we switched it all up about 18-ish months ago and offered a whole new suite of products that includes coaching and technology and marketing and education and just everything. And so that was a real shift for us to try and have a full suite of products that people can use. For us, we are very, very interested in helping our, we're always paying attention to the new people in the industry. We're always paying attention to the high end of the industry. And I would suggest that the middle 60 sometimes gets a little bit forgotten. And so part of our coaching, part of our things that we've tried to launch are really built to help the middle 60 be a little bit more successful in their careers or in their lives. And so for us, we're really paying attention to that. And then secondarily, we're paying attention to smart growth within our footprint. We don't have aspirations to be a national firm. We have aspirations to be more known in California, where we have 40 offices. We should have 80 offices. That's a number I'm just saying, but I think more density helps markets understand who Windermere is. We're really strong in Washington and Oregon. We could be stronger in Idaho. We could be stronger in Montana. We could be stronger in California. So smart growth in those areas for us is smart. When we did that suite change, we retained our ownership and we retained some of the technology in MoxieWorks. As I think you all know, we had a pretty deep relationship there. But when we redid our suite, we took a look at products outside of MoxieWorks to add into the platform that we felt might service our customers, our agents or owners better. So we're constantly evaluating tech and taking things out of the suite and replacing them. So I think that's just natural progression of a company.
Yeah, absolutely. Evolution.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I certainly, yeah. There you go.
Well, OB, thanks so much for joining the RealTrending podcast. I really appreciate you getting on. Yeah.
All right, good to see you.
Good to see you too.